as a former British Army captain, Tim Bradshaw never questioned his decision to travel to Ukraine to help the relief effort. He is doing it, he says, because I can. He's heading back to Ukraine in a few days, but he's spared a few minutes to speak to us. Good morning to you, Tim.
Good morning, Kaye. How are you doing this morning?
I'm very well indeed. So, am I right? You've just recently returned from the Ukraine-Polish border?
Yeah, that's right. We got back last Wednesday night. I think the days blurred a little, if I'm honest. But yeah, a couple of days ago.
OK, so what was the purpose of that mission and what did you witness there?
I think it's really interesting. So I sort of sat watching the news, and as you rightly said, it's a long time since anybody called me captain, but that's okay. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I've got the resources and I've got a really good group of people, and the right thing to do is to go and help if you can. But what we really wanted to do was to work out what actually needed to be done. The world has been incredibly generous, but it's much more challenging to work out where the real problems lie. So what we actually did is we found some contacts inside Ukraine and on the border, and we got some quite detailed intelligence as to what sort of people actually needed. And then it took literally less than an hour. We've got a rally team under our kind of "Because I Can" slogan. We're proving that you can do anything you set your mind to. So we had this crazy idea to go and do the Dakar rally on a motorbike, which is even more crazy, but I didn't have a motorbike and have never ridden off-road. But because of that, we've got a sort of truck and some trailers, which, of course, were the perfect vehicle to get all the gear we needed to go out to Ukraine. So the whole team literally never missed a heartbeat, not a single person backed down, and our sponsors all stepped up and said, that's exactly what we should do. And in fact, last weekend, we should have been racing rather than being in Ukraine. But again, all of our sort of sponsors went, no. What we're doing is much more important. So we worked out what was needed. And it turns out that it was rations, sleeping bags and first aid kits. So with the help of another Scottish company, Vango, we took 5,000 meals, 300 sleeping bags and 300 first aid kits. And we managed to get them actually across the Ukrainian border and into where they're most needed, because the reality on the ground is perhaps different to the perception that a lot of people have.
Well, how different then, Tim?
I think it's really interesting to see it for real. So obviously it's incredibly, it's heartbreaking really to see so many people coming out of Ukraine and into Poland. And certainly, even though me and a number of my colleagues have been to war on a few occasions, we watched a guy kind of my age, I guess 40-ish, he says tongue-in-cheek slightly, and basically he delivered his mother, his wife and his children to the border, obviously huge amounts of tears, turned on his heel and went back to fight. And it was very clear that the entire family and he were never going to do anything other than that, which was quite inspiring. But then what dawned on us is that the people going back into Ukraine are in real need of aid, because ironically, the refugees coming out, although they have nothing, it's truly heartbreaking to see. They are, of course, moving into Poland, who have been amazing in the way they're looking after people, but they are at least moving towards kind of safety and opportunity, if that makes sense, albeit they're having to start from scratch. Whereas the guys, it is mostly men actually, but going back into Ukraine, they have literally nothing, and they're really short of rations and water and sleeping bags. And as an old soldier, somebody's will to fight and will to continue is rapidly sort of decreased when you start not sleeping properly and not eating properly. So it was quite different to what we thought.
And I mean, are they going back into fight with just what they stand up in, or do they go into an organised sort of military unit?
Well, I think it's probably a mixture of both. And I think what we witnessed, and obviously I can't speak for the whole country and I wouldn't want to do that, so I can only talk about the guys that we spoke to, but very much the people we were talking to, they were you and I, Kaye, if that makes sense. The professional army is doing an amazing job, and the professional army has a reserve element who are, I guess, a bit like our reserves in the British Army, but they have some kit and equipment. But the people we were talking to just refuse to give up. So they're quite literally just going and joining the fight. And it's not just fighting, they're manning the hospitals, providing sort of aid and sustenance to the soldiers with whatever they stand up in and whatever they've got. And that's really quite inspiring to watch.
I was going to say, as a former army man, you above all people will appreciate just how courageous that is.
Oh, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think what's really amazing, we often joke about people having a look in their eye, and that entire country has a look in its eye, probably taken from its, president. And their will to continue is just phenomenal. As some of you will have seen on our kind of social media stuff, we put a few pictures up. And whilst we had to carry all the rations and sleeping bags across the border into Ukraine and then load them into vans, and we were kind of instantly assisted by a group of about 8 Ukrainian kind of young teenagers who were essentially too young to fight, but refusing to be refugees. So rather than waiting to be asked, they just wanted to help, and they just wanted to do whatever they could to support the sort of effort, really. And again, truly inspiring.
Does it immediately feel different when you cross that border? Does it feel like you're moving from a country at peace, albeit, as you say, Poland doing an incredible amount to deal with the refugees, but do you feel like you're moving from a country of peace to a country at war?
No, I mean, I think, Kaye, for me and my whole team, and of our sort of group, if you like, 2 or 3 of us were ex-military and a couple weren't. And I think one of the strangest things is you can sit in a town almost on the Polish border. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it because there's just too many Z's and S's. But you can literally have dinner and a glass of wine, and you wouldn't know it was happening. It's a really almost eerie feeling. And then as you cross the border at Medica into the other side of the town, I mean, obviously there's this sort of trail of desperate people. But if you sort of look past that, it feels weirdly normal. But obviously, the further east you go, the more war zone it becomes. And obviously, we've not been to Kyiv or to Mariupol, but I can, having been to other places around the world, I can only imagine what that must be like.
I mean, Tim, you referred a couple of times to your team and we, etc. Who is the team? Who are we? Who are you?
I'm a massive believer of diverse teams, and by diverse teams, what I mean is different skill sets, different communication styles, different sort of strengths and weaknesses. So we have our rally team. So we've got one of the guys, Dell, and Dell is an ex-Remy mechanic. So he's fixed tanks under fire, and he now works on our rally bikes when we go away into the desert to racing. So pretty handy guy to have about. I mean, he literally drove back from a rally in Portugal, sort of swapped kit bags and came out with us because there was no way he wasn't coming to help. And then we've got the guys from Moto Joe, so Martin and the guys from Moto Joe, and he's an IT specialist. And again, you'll appreciate probably not something for this conversation, but you have to be a little bit careful with what forms of communication you're using, where and when. So sort of Martin kept us straight with that. And then Rab and I, last time Rab and I got together, we tried to climb Mount Everest in 2015. So he and I have a bit of history of going to strange places. And then my co-director, David Samuel, from Sandstone. And again, David is probably the least likely war zone operator, but never missed a heartbeat and stepped straight up. But I think the other bit's really, really important, actually, is it took a whole team of people in the background to pull everything together to sort out paperwork. Fiona and Glenn, 2 of the guys just local to us, we normally go hill walking together, and suddenly they were stepped up and they were doing administration. My other half, Sammy, she's a financial consultant, so she was putting together all the numbers and making sure we got the finances in place. So it's a huge sort of, what we didn't want to do was do it blindly. We wanted to create the biggest effect we possibly could with the resources and the people that we have. So everybody stepped up, played their part, and put it together as best we could. And of course, now we've got better intelligence and better knowledge and contacts on the ground. So we're going to go back next week and hopefully be sort of more effective again. Yeah.
And you used to say you're a former British Army captain, but you now run a leadership training business based in Dunblane, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. We've got a few locations actually, but we sort of specialise in doing, not talking. I'm not particularly academic, so if you want to sort of do a course in leadership and tick a box, we're probably not for you. But we sort of specialise in helping people understand their teams, helping people build relationships, and kind of practical leadership toolkits. So what do I do tomorrow at 9:00 when I've got to make a decision under pressure with my team? That's kind of where we come from.
Yeah. And you've written a book which is called Because I Can. Presumably that was the instinct that just kicked in then for you when you saw the situation unfolding in Ukraine and thought, well, okay, I'm the guy, I can.
Yeah, I mean, as we were walking across the Ukrainian border, my co-director David, he turned to me, he said, "You know what, Bradder's nickname, obviously." He said, Bradders, I've always, my whole life, I've made a real point of trying to say yes more, and just when people give you an opportunity to say yes." And he said, "The only fundamental flaw in that plan is you." So I'm just I think a lot of the time, if we're all honest, how many times on a Friday night, probably yourself included, Kaye, right? How many times on a Friday night have you had people around for dinner and you've maybe had a couple of glasses of wine and somebody says, "Let's go and do this," whatever that might be, walk up a hill, it doesn't matter. And you go, yeah, brilliant, we'll do that. And then the following morning, what happens is we all find reasons as to why we can't do that. And the same is true in business. And in fact, the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of people just saying, "Look, this is the problem and this won't work and that won't work and we can't do this and that is going to be terrible." And we have this kind of expression, which is fear, which is false expectation appearing real. So in other words, we're focusing on stuff that might happen or could happen or should happen. Whereas actually, if you can build a "because I can" mindset, which is that I am going to do this, I can do this, and therefore I'm going to be part of my own solution. And I think what we've just done in Ukraine was an amazing example of that, really. It took 48 hours to put this together, purely because everybody around us has that "because I can" mindset. And it's not difficult. It's normal to question yourself. It's normal to doubt yourself. It's normal to have a bad day. But if you set out with the attitude that I can do this and I am going to be, this is what we're going to do, then it's amazing what you can achieve when you don't focus on what you can't do.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you've inspired quite a few people this morning listening to that. Tim, thank you very much indeed. And really interesting to get your first-hand account of being, on the border there between Ukraine and Poland. That's Tim Bradshaw, former British Army captain, author of "Because I Can," who now leads a leadership business.